you play Mon Mothma, and you've been playing her for quite a while. But the character is inspired from, not inspired, but is from Return of the Jedi. I was just wondering, was there any specific part of that scene or her speech that you pulled from that helped you expand upon her character so well?
Yeah, the first time that I got to play Mon Mothma was a long time ago now. I think it was about 17 years ago. And I was very respectful of stepping into Caroline Blakeston's shoes and very honored to be able to get to play the young version of this woman that her and George Lucas originated back in the early 1980s. I was very respectful of the idea that George Lucas wrote a female leader of a rebel alliance back in the 1980s. That's a powerful woman he created. So yes, I went back and at that time I was a very young actor. I watched that scene many times to see how Caroline spoke, how she held herself, who that character was. Each time I've gone back to play her, I have looked at that scene again just to remind myself of what they created together. And there's a very famous line in there that Star Wars fans often say to me, which is that Mon Mothma says, which is many Bothans died to bring us this news. And I always saw at the core of that a pain that this woman was carrying a lot of grief or pain or the weight of responsibility of her role. And I was forever curious about what that was. Who is this woman? What has she lived? What has she had to sacrifice? What is the cost of being her? And so now the opportunity to explore that in Andor is, I am very grateful for.
So you spoke about exploring this character now. I was just, because we saw 4 episodes, and in that one episode I saw you, and I don't want to get too far into spoilers, but we see that those side of your struggles as a woman and as a politician as well. What is it like to explore that side of the mythology, since Star Wars is, we see a lot of Star Wars is with lightsabers, Jedi, and Sith. So what is that like?
Well, each Star Wars film, I think, has its own little identity, if you will. And I think Andor definitely lives within the world of Rogue One. It is very gritty, very gray, almost like a piece of independent cinema. But this is this begins at a moment where there is no organized rebellion, where there is no structure, where this woman who has been steeped in empire for her whole life, really, has to risk everything that she has built and stood for to stand up for what she really believes in, to be not just a voice for democracy, but to risk it all to build a rebellion against this dictatorship. You know, this idea that oppression breeds rebellion. When you've got nowhere else to go, you have to risk everything. And everybody's sacrifice looks slightly different, right? Cassian's sacrifice will look very different to Mon Mothma's, will look different. Like each of the characters has their own story, their own sacrifice, their own risk within empire as well as within rebellion. You know, this Andor explores many different facets. And I think long form narrative allows for that in a way that cinema doesn't. I think long form narrative allows for you to explore not just plot, not just story, but it can humanize these characters in a way that we haven't seen before.
And speaking about we haven't seen before, we see you, because we've seen you give out speeches kind of these inspiring speeches and the urgency of the mission. Now we see you kind of play a role in the duplicitous nature of the spy aspect of what Mon Mothma is trying to accomplish. What's it like to go get into that for you?
I think it's wonderful to have the opportunity to genuinely flesh her out and to give space within a world where traditionally there are Jedis and lightsabers, like you said before. But also when George Lucas created it, there was politics at its heart as well. And this allows time to invest in that shadowy world of politics. It's because we have the time to do it. It can be less it can be richer, it can be more gritty, it can be more human.
Yeah, I agree so much. I liked what I saw so far, even though it's only 4 episodes. I have to wrap, unfortunately. Thank you so much for your time. I really appreciate it. And I'm going to tell everyone to watch this because it's just a really great show. Thank you.
Oh, thank you. Cheers.
So, what can you tell us about working with a set that's very practical, very tangible, and when it's like compared to some of the other shows that has been around in Star Wars world, like Boba Fett and The Mandalorian?
I think this show is so human, and it's gritty, and it's dark, and it's intimate, and it's a side of Star Wars that I personally haven't seen, and that's really intriguing to me, and I'm sure it'll be intriguing to, I hope it's intriguing to audience members to see really what happens behind the curtain of each character.
So speaking about each character and something that we've never seen before, Andor is, for me, when I watched the first 4 episodes, I kind of saw a reflection of this world that we live in right now today. It's the sad state that it's in, kind of, but also like hopeful. I was wondering what it's like to be part of that story, to be able to see ourselves in these characters, as well as a woman of color such as yourself playing a part in that representation.
Yeah, it's a mirror of our society in a way where a woman like me is in this show. I think you'll see what we see on a day-to-day basis walking down the street. You'll see represented on screen, and this is a show about people at a cusp of a revolution, and what does that mean for each and every single character? Does that mean some stand up for the cause? Does it mean that some take a step back? Does it mean bravery is being questioned? I think everyone's sort of moral compass is kind of being questioned, and it's similar to sort of what is going on in the world today, right? You're like, I don't even know how to tackle it. Even at times you want to be so part of it, but how do you fight? With what tools? And you educate yourself, and I think people in this show, and the characters of the show are going through something kind of similar. You're like, oh, this is a time to get together. There's a time to realize that we have sometimes nothing in common, but we have everything in common. And it's a big realization of that, especially in Ferrix, where there's such a camaraderie and unity. It's people instantly come together, and then it will sort of unravel throughout the show.
So you spoke about Ferrix. I don't want to get too spoilery in territory, but you play a it's pretty physical, your role in that during one of the episodes at least. What was that like, at least running through the city? Was it, I guess, did you have to play a certain like parts of it, like go run here, run there, or did you get to play around in that city, I guess?
Funny you asked that. I because the set was so big, it was an actual city, like you say, and I was able to sort of run freely wherever kind of I wanted. I just needed to end up in Rick's Road, which is the main road of Ferrix. And yeah, it was liberating. It was liberating because I sort of had autonomy of where my character would run or choose to run. Was it left? Was it right? And because since everything was filmable, I could kind of go wherever and it was fine. So that was really cool. And I had never done anything like that. Usually it's like, you got to run from here to here, because then there's the green screen ends here. And that wasn't the case here. Here was, you know, and by the time that I filmed that scene, I was so in touch with the geography of Ferrix. I knew that place like the palm of my hand. I knew exactly how to get from point A to point B, which is very different than when I first got on set. I completely got lost.
So what was it like to play opposite Diego? Because your characters seem to have this kind of closeness, but also, you know, there's a distance between your two characters as well. So I was just wondering if you can elaborate more on that.
Well, I think that when you meet them, you realize that these people have known each other for forever, and you sort of feel the history, and you feel the tension of that history, and if there's one thing that is for sure, is that trust is there, and if there's space, it comes from her, and her trying to protect herself, because, you know, Cassian, I think, has disappointed Bix and Maarva, because he always leaves. He's never there. And the second you get close, he's on to the next one. You know, he's off. So I think when he comes into Bix's life, I think she's so into like her salyard and owning this salyard and selling the pieces. She's so into her job and what she knows she's good at. And all of a sudden in comes Cassian. It sort of shifts everything just a little bit. And she's like, oh, man, right when everything was going smoothly, here he comes.
Because when I saw it, she seems to have found her place and everything. And she has this fierceness and very strong, like, kind of presence. But I was just wondering, did you get to also interact with any droids maybe? Or did you, you know, was there any time for, I guess like improv, I guess. I don't want to say like comedic improv, but, you know, just to say, oh, we can probably take it in this direction or this or another direction.
I think you do that. You could do that, but you don't do that with Tony Gilroy's writing.
Okay, yeah, that's it.
You just don't. One, not because you aren't allowed to. It's just you don't have to.
Right.
Like, it's so good and it's so complex and it's packed with so much. It's at kind of the opposite. It's like trying to figure it out. How do I play this that would make him proud? As opposed to improving. You kind of, I mean, I'm sure he wouldn't have mind. He's not egotistical at all. He would have been like, yeah, that's fine. But you don't need to. It's not, you don't have to at all.
Well, that's it. That's all the time I have. Thank you so much. I really enjoyed the show. It's just so dark and gritty and just a different side of Star Wars I've never seen before. So I really appreciate that. And you being a part of that to tell that kind of story. So thank you.
Thank you so much. Thank you.
Bye.
It was lovely talking to you.
Because of the nature of your character, and or at least how he was introduced at the D23 Expo, he wasn't exactly the warmest receptive welcoming that he got. But anyways, I just wanted to know what it's like to be a part of this, and has it dawned on you that you get to be a part of the Star Wars universe?
It's been pretty incredible. I thought the D23 experience was like, it was like the best party ever. It was kind of amazing. And yeah, as Kathleen Kennedy introduced Syril as somebody people would love to hate, I kind of thought that was really accurate, actually. I think there are things within Syril that annoy people, but that they recognize as well, maybe in somebody in their own lives, or, you know, you've seen that person, or maybe they're a part of your family or something. And really, yeah, it's really only started to dawn on me within the past 3 months how amazing it is to be a part of this family. I mean, when we were filming it, we were literally in a bubble in the pandemic, and we were just so happy to be alive and working. I think we were just like, oh, it's another job. And Tony Gilroy had always approached it in such a refreshing, freeing way, to be like, yeah, we're just making another thing. You know, don't forget about Star Wars. We're just making this project. say the lines, do the characters. And it really, just since I started doing press, it's just been like most amazing reception. Like this means so much to people. And this legacy is almost 50 years old. And you can have children, who are 7 chatting to people in their 80s about the same characters, the same stories, the same films and TV shows. And that's like, it's been amazing. Yeah.
Yeah. Since it's been, you mentioned about the production process, I was just wondering, because even though all these Star Wars shows and movies has their own identity, a lot of us recognize how it is Jedis and Sith and lightsabers and whatnot. And Rogue One has shown us there's a real humanity to it. So I was just wondering, what was it about Tony Gilroy's writing that drew you to the character, who, like you said, is a character you love to hate, but is also a little bit complex, because we saw 4 episodes already, and he does have some, motivations and drives, but he's also very, there's something within him that strikes you as like, oh yeah, there's like an internal conflict, so to speak.
Yeah, exactly that. Well, I mean, the first thing that attracted me to it was Tony Gilroy, full stop. What he's accomplished as a writer and a director is I have so much time for. And then I'd seen Rogue One and saw how different and new Star Wars could be, and it could incorporate elements of 70s genre films, and has a Dirty Dozen element to it, but it's also grittier and more human. And then Andor just takes that to the max. I mean, Tony writes real human beings, doesn't really write 2-dimensional cutouts. And Cassian is an incredibly complicated character who makes very questionable decisions, and he's the hero. And in the same regard, Syril, who's one of the antagonists, is full of light and shade, and existing within this gray area of not really knowing where he is, who he is, what he wants to be. He has his sights fixed on the Empire, and the structure and power and control of that system is very desirous to him. But what really attracted me was the fact that he was in a state of becoming. He wasn't fully formed. And the fact that we were going to explore that over 5 years, start out in Syril's infancy, in the first couple of episodes. You have episode 1 to 3, and that's kind of a complete character arc, actually. Mm-hmm. Like he rises and falls. And then there are 9 more episodes, and then 12 more next year, So like there's such scope to like really go into his humanity and the intimacy of his domestic life. He wound up meeting his mother, halfway through the series. And when have you ever met, a villain's mother, I think, especially in Star Wars.
Yeah. Sort of coming home thing. So now a little bit more of a fun question. I was just curious to know, do you ever see yourself visiting like the Star Wars Galaxy's Edge, or about to in character, or would you want to just go in there and enjoy it as, a fan?
Oh, I'd want to go to the Edge for sure. Yeah, for sure. Yeah. Which I think could be enjoyable. It'd be pretty scary, but yeah.
All right. And thank you very much. I appreciate this. And I'm going to tell everyone to watch this, because this is really, like you said, a great, it's nothing like it's not the traditional Star Wars, I guess, but
yeah, I think this could be a way in for people that aren't necessarily Star Wars fans.
Yeah, exactly.
It's a mashup of so many different genres, and yet exists within this kind of beautiful world that Star Wars has managed to create and sustain for almost 50 years. And yeah, I'm so glad you enjoyed it.
Hi, Michael. I think we should have a series called Nerd to Cover. I think it's fabulous.
Oh my gosh, that's actually what I was going to ask you about, because you play a mom who basically or like a surrogate adoptive mom who takes in Cassian. And I just want to know what it's like to find the humanity in this show, where we can see ourselves in these stories and share, or at least relate to these experiences.
I think this is a particularly good example of that, where the world of the Star Wars world is very well established, as it were, or Rogue One, even the prequels. But we know a world in which we are vaguely in a future. But what is interesting is what happens human nature in that future. And the human nature is prescribed, like all human natures, by parents, by history, by geography. And this is similar, is that you suddenly get to investigate the domestic human aspect of living in the future.
So your Star Wars is no stranger to magic with Jedis and the Force, and then there's also you yourself are you also familiar with a magical franchise. I just wanted to know, what do you think about Andor is that people will relate to the most?
I think this time they're getting a chance to relate to the intricacies of human nature, the domesticity of people who do live. You're not just getting a spaceship landing on a planet and some fellows with helmets get out. You're getting to understand, what is life like on those planets? What do the people do? How do they do a different style of, how do they work in a different way to other people in other planets? And sure enough, in this one, I live in the land of, I live in the planet Ferrix, and there the people are just urban people who live by scavenging, recycling metal, fixing spaceships, and sending them on their way. Unambitious in terms of beauty, but very ambitious in terms of community. And how do those values match with another planet where something else is the dominant force? And, it's a great refraction of our world, I suppose.
And you speaking about Ferrix, what was it like to be a part of that set? Because it seems very practical and very tangible, and you could actually physically touch it almost. So what yeah, but basically, what was it like?
I just hope they keep those sets and you can walk around them, because every nut, every bolt, every gully, every gutter, every window has a finish with, recycled bits of metal from somewhere else. So it's been beautifully thought through. Bits of spaceships were used to design the houses. So everything has a slightly Adobe but meets a spaceship world. The streets are raw and rugged, and in a way rather backwards, a bit like a sort of nostalgia for an earlier time. So it's got bits of history floating around in it, which is really what any aesthetic has. Any place you are has history, people trying to repeat something, people trying to make something new with old stuff. So it was fantastic every day. And then into all of that, you're wearing clothes that are reflecting the colors or the type of work that people do in that planet or on that planet. And that's completely different to a color coding of another planet. And that's also how the world is. It's great.
So you spoke about color and with the communities for your character, and I noticed that when we go visit in your episode, at least, I don't want to get too spoilery, but what was it like to get, I guess, more hands-on with so-called the action and the infiltration of some ships that you may have visited?
Well, Maarva's job was to gather metal from and recycle, sell, make, do, repeat, recycle, sell, get a hold of other stuff. She's a sort of scavenger. So she used to go to other planets and go to other, find, dead, broken spaceships and strip them. And in one of her such adventures, she meets Cassian, who becomes her son, when he was a child. So, it's a wonderful way of both laying down the kind of life they led before Cassian came into their life, and then how Cassian came into their life, and how, she embraced him entirely and loved him as a son. But their relationship has always been tainted by the fact that he's always looking for his sister and always never quite committing to the household that has saved him, which is both a good thing. And I think that's Maarva's weakness, is that she loves him massively, but she can't own him.
So I have one more question before I have to wrap up, but what was it like to act with B2MO?
B2MO. Well, I'm hoping to get a B2MO in my life before it ends. I think it's it was fabulous to have a small droid who goes around the house and slightly annoys you, because by now that you have such a relationship with the droid, and the droid both behaves and misbehaves, is good at certain things and not so good at other things. I mean, it's got a fantastic anthropomorphic element, but also like a dog, it's getting old and has to plug in a lot. It doesn't do very much work, and it is really, I suppose, keeps Maarva company.
All right. Well, I have to wrap up, but thank you so much. I love this show so much because it takes us to a different side of Star Wars that we've never seen, and a real humanity to it.
In the lectures, fanboys, professional artists, and professors. Maybe a nerd who's just like you, talking about the things that you like too. So I invite you to the NOC. In full color, you see me. The hard knock life, comics, movies, and TV. Yeah, pop culture with a